The Beatles, without a doubt the most famous band in history, have been covered for decades. Fans know a lot about the band, including odd information like their attempt at a Lord of the Rings film, their exile from a country, and even lyrics. We can simply say no musicians have been analyzed as thoroughly as the Beatles. What has received less attention is their tenure as solo artists. Each member enjoyed success on their own, with some even producing masterpieces. Despite selling millions of albums individually, just one member of the group receives eternal bragging rights for owning the group's biggest solo album. In today's video, we will have a look at the Beatles and the members with the most successful solo record. The Beatles are the most famous band of all time. There has simply never been another band as big or as influential as the Beatles in the history of rock music. The Fab Four made their debut in the 1960s and were able to conquer the globe of pop culture and radically transform the music industry with their music and a number of technological achievements throughout their time together. The band, which included Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, was an irresistible force throughout their time together. Yes, there were many outstanding bands before and after the Beatles, but no other band has had the same type of influence as the Liverpool Lads. Even in this day and age of streaming, the band still possesses some of the most outstanding records in music history, which is incredible given that these records have lasted for decades. The trio eventually finished together, which both disappointed fans and opened doors to tremendous songwriting chances for each member. They were all successful on their own. After the band split up, each member went on to release solo material. Longtime fans of the band were understandably excited to learn what it would be like for each member to pursue their own interests. As disappointed as fans were that the group had split up, there was a sense of relief that each member would offer something fresh to the table. As fans saw, each member of the group was able to flourish in their separate activities, and all four members of the Beatles achieved a great deal of solo success. This was usually accomplished by simply creating their own music, but in some cases, such as with Wings and the Traveling Wilburys, the members ended up in other bands that were also successful. Despite each member's enormous solo success, the truth is that none of them were able to recreate the same magic that they had while recording Beatles records. Nonetheless, the guys' individual success was unavoidable, but only one of the Beatles can lay claim to having the biggest solo album of the group. So when the Beatles broke up, none of them were older than 30 years old, and they all had a lot of music left in them. Though nothing could ever match their early collective legacy's importance and quality, their extensive individual catalogs include many artistic, critical, and economic successes. The newfound independence allowed John Lennon and Paul McCartney to explore more personal work. For George Harrison and Ringo Starr, the change-up highlighted their individual skills. Here's a look at both of the Beatles' two best-selling albums, suggesting that there are sometimes second acts for those from Liverpool. If you're enjoying this video so far, hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe for more Beatles content. The biggest solo Beatles album is George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. Some may be surprised to learn that George Harrison is the Beatles member with the most successful solo record. All Things Must Pass, Harrison's major masterpiece, was a juggernaut of an album that launched what would become a genuinely outstanding solo career for the former Beatles guitarist. The huge CD, which included approximately 30 songs, was a masterwork compiled by the gifted songwriter. Toward the conclusion of their time together, Harrison was turning into one of the group's stronger songwriters, and some of the compositions on this album were actually offered to the members of the group by Harrison. Their decision to forego some of these songs resulted in an even greater album, All Things Must Pass. To this day, this is regarded as maybe the best Beatles solo album, and it has earned countless honors. It is widely regarded as one of the finest albums of all time, and it was even inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Harrison, sometimes known as the Quiet Beatle, has the most successful Beatles solo record in history, having been certified 6 times platinum by the RIAA in the United States. Cloud 9 by George Harrison, 1987. Cloud 9, George's second best-selling album, was released 17 years later and was produced by another studio maestro, Jeff Lynne, who pushed George to levels of inspiration he hadn't experienced in years. The biggest hit from the album was a reworking of an obscure 1962 song called Got My Mind Set on You. Lynne's George Martin-like production is noticeable, especially on When We Was Fab, a passionate recollection of the Beatles including Ringo on drums, over 1 million units sold in total. Double Fantasy by John Lennon, 1980. Although the album was released many weeks before Lennon's death, his unexpected death gave huge attention to his late work, propelling it to the top of the charts and making it his best-selling record. The album alternates between songs written by Lennon and Yoko Ono, although the hits are all Lennon songs, such as Just Like Starting Over, Woman, and Watching the Wheels, the lyrics of which eloquently express the contentment he found outside of the spotlight. Over 3 million units sold in total. Imagine by John Lennon, 1971. Imagine's title track, produced by Phil Spector, is undoubtedly John Lennon's most renowned song. While John Lennon's 1970 album Plastic Ono Band examined introspective psychological insights, this release broadens those ideas to larger global subjects such as world peace. Another outstanding ballad on the album is Jealous Guy, a disarmingly honest love song. How Do You Sleep is a rant against Maca that emphasizes the album's message of harmony and brotherhood, over 2 million units sold in total. Band on the Run by Paul McCartney, 1973. From the album's opening title track to Jet to Bluebird, a song that matches Blackbird from his days with the Beatles, McCartney's unquestioned masterwork exudes a feeling of exhilaration and fun. Dustin Hoffman wrote the bar sing-along Picasso's Last Words as an on-the-spot challenge when Paul was on the set of Papillon. Band on the Run was released as a Wings project. However, the only other musicians are Linda and Denny Lane's wife, over 3 million units sold in total. McCartney's Paul McCartney, 1970. Paul's debut solo album is constructed similarly to the Beatles albums. It begins with a little dedication to his wife, the lovely Linda, and then moves on to the country bluesish That Would Be Something and Mama Miss America, an extended session with Paul playing all the instruments. The lyrics of Teddy Boy addresses the struggle of a teenage boy in the 1950s. The huge smash is, of course, Maybe I'm Amazed, another proclamation of his love for Linda, with all the components of a great song, including a phony ending. Over 2 million units sold in total. Ringo Starr, 1973. Ringo's solo career peaked in the 1970s, thanks in part to a string of top-selling hits from his eponymous debut. The biggest success is Photograph, which he co-wrote with his best friend, George Harrison. The lyrics are delivered by Ringo in his one-of-a-kind, direct yet emotional style, with outstanding production from Richard Perry. The CD also features the nostalgic You're 16 and I Am the Greatest, a song written by John Lennon for Ringo, over 1 million units sold in total. Goodnight Vienna by Ringo Starr, 1974. This was not as successful as Ringo, but it did sell reasonably well. It includes another nostalgic ballad, The Platters' Only You, but it is most likely remembered for the No No song, an anti-vice song recorded years before Ringo established a clean lifestyle. A hilarious Elton John Bernie Taupin song called Snookeroo is included as a bonus, over 500,000 units sold in total. Working Class Hero, John Lennon. The 1970 LP by John Lennon / Plastic Ono Band is undoubtedly his greatest solo work. Working Class Hero, the fourth song, is a very personal look at the British class system. I think it's for individuals like me who are working class, higher or lower, who are supposed to be processed into the middle classes through the machinery. Lennon told Rolling Stone in 1970, "It's my experience, and I hope it serves as a caution to others. I'm not saying the song is revolutionary, but that it's a song for the revolution." My Sweet Lord by George Harrison. My Sweet Lord was both a blessing and a curse for George Harrison. It was a tremendous radio hit that helped propel the triple LP All Things Must Pass up the charts, but it also triggered a plagiarism complaint. which resulted in years of costly and humiliating litigation. This song is strikingly similar to the 1963 Chiffin's classic He's So Fine, and a judge eventually determined that he subconsciously stole it. The Chiffins later recorded a cover of My Sweet Lord. In 1980, John Lennon told Playboy he must have known. He's wiser than that. It's actually irrelevant, only on a monetary level does it matter. He could have modified a couple of bars in that song and no one would have known, but he just let it go and paid the price. Maybe he felt God would just let him off the hook. Paul has the most #1 albums, 5 among ex-Beatles. After All Things Must Pass, George's second and last #1 single was Living in the Material World, 1973. In 2001, Harrison died. Lennon's final #1 album, Double Fantasy, was released 2 weeks before his death. Following Imagine, 1971, and Walls and Bridges, 1974. Ringo Starr never had a #1 album, but his Ringo reached #2 in 1973, and Goodnight Vienna reached #8 in 1975. Paul's run of #1 singles began with McCartney in 1971, and continued with Egypt Station in September 2018. At the time of his death, Lennon's 3 #1 singles equaled him for the lead with Paul. There's no telling what he or George would have done in the decades to come if they had lived. However, since the group's disbandment nearly 50 years ago, Paul McCartney has been the most successful recording artist of any ex-Beatle. Tell us which solo Beatles song you still listen to and why. We'd love to hear your stories. And don't forget to subscribe to Yellow Submarine, hit the like button, and share this video with Beatles lovers. We will see you in the next one.